Hello everyone, my name is Mike, and this is the Bored Cyborg. Welcome back to yet another video. Today I am answering all of your questions that you guys left me on my 1,000 subscriber Q&A video. I'm going to try to answer every single question you guys left, whether it was 1 or 2 or 4, as some of you did. I want to try to answer every single one, but if I do miss one, I apologize. But I am going to answer at least one question from each individual. Now, these are in no particular order. I tried to keep them in order, in some sort of order, but I failed. So let's just jump right into the first question. I've got the whole list of questions right here. Let's do it. The first question is from Leroy Green 85, and he wanted to know how difficult it was making the shelves that I made by hand for my collection. Now, I gotta be honest, my stepfather is a carpenter, so he basically showed me how to build the first shelf, and then I built all of the others after that. So I think I have like 8 to 10 at this point, so he helped me build the first one, which did take some time and some learning. He has all the tools, so you gotta have certain tools for this kind of a job. But once he showed me how to do the first one, I was off on my own, and I'd buy the wood from Home Depot or Lowe's for like 60 to 70 bucks. I'd buy some felt for like 10 bucks, some spray adhesive. So all in all, probably around 80 bucks per shelf. And it took around, I don't know, 2-3 hours, depending on how fast I was working, how many breaks I was taking, etc., etc. So they weren't too difficult to make. Another question from Leroy Green 85 was, what was the genesis of me making YouTube videos? I have been creating my entire life, since I was a little boy with a camcorder. There's actually a video that my mom has of me directing my little sister in some sort of a play that I was doing of Jack and the Beanstalk in our living room. I was probably 4 or 5 and she was 2 or 3, and it's really funny actually because I start yelling at her when she screws up. I'm like, no, get over there! So from that, making little skits and short little films, I guess you could call them, when I was younger, mock infomercials, all throughout my single-digit years in the 90s, I would start producing and rapping, actually. I made my own beats. I sold beats in my teens, in my early to late teens. I rapped basically that entire time from when I was around 13 to about 18 or so. My rap name was Rhythmic, and we had a little group of rappers that would come into the studio. My father was a musician. I've been a musician kind of my whole life too, and we'd record down in the booth. It was some of the best times of my life. We would just write rhymes and just have a good time, and that was what I did in my teens. And like I said, I also made music. I also made beats. I'm a huge hip-hop head and was inspired to just start making beats when I was around 13, 14 years old, so I did so. Now, towards the late teens, I was still rapping when my buddies and I would start doing these weird skit videos. Now, this is before YouTube, or right around the dawn of YouTube. We would make these little bizarre skits where I'd be playing the piano and like acting out certain little improvisational things, and then we got more serious and started coming up with concepts, and then we would go into making our first YouTube channel, High Blog TV, which is now rebranded as Mikey Pixels. When I moved away, it was rebranded. My best friend Mike still runs the channel, and you could check out all of my old work when I was 20 to 21 years old, very, very young and stupid and very different than I am now. And in my mid-20s, I started writing screenplays and shorts, and I have a whole bunch of those under my belt at this point. That led me to The Bored Cyborg, which I started about 1.5 years ago. It's just another endeavor in my lifelong journey of creativity. And The Bored Cyborg is really a culmination of everything that I've ever done in my life. And what I want it to be is sort of the bastion of all of my creativity. And that leads me into the last part of his question, which was, did any content creators influence me? And yes, I don't think I'd be here today without James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd. He and Happy Console Gamer, those two guys I've been watching for like 10 to 15 years now. AVGN since like 04, 05. Happy Console Gamer since like 08. And without those two, I don't know if I'd be sitting here today. James Rolfe really inspired me to continue doing what I was doing and just to be creative, and he's somebody I look up to this day. John Lossy asks if I am a native of North Carolina. I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, but I currently live in North Carolina for the past 6 years or so. I live I was born and raised in Stamford until I was around 26. I moved down to the Raleigh area in North Carolina, and that's where I am now. He'd also like to know if I was stranded on an island with only one genre of movie, what would it be? And that's easy, it would be horror. And that is simple because horror encompasses and can encompass so many genres, if not all genres. Horror drama, pretty much, The Exorcist, that has some drama in it. Horror comedies, Evil Dead, obviously. Horror romance, horror war. I could go on and on and on. Horror sci-fi, even children's horror, family-friendly horror. So I don't feel like I'd ever run out of movies to watch. Horror is my favorite genre, no question about it. But I do love my action films. Radical Velocity asks, what do I think is the most underrated movie of the 80s? I wrote a bunch down, but the one that really came to mind, one of my favorite films of all time, my top 5 easily, it's always shifting around in there, is Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind by director Hayao Miyazaki. This movie, when I watched this in my early 20s, it swept me away and made me look at the world differently, made me more conscious of our planet, of our environment, and it gave us a strong female protagonist who I look up to this day. And honestly, if I had a daughter and my wife or my girlfriend was okay with it, I'd want to name her Nausicaa. I see how that could potentially pose some problems for her growing up. Nausea, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I've overthought this. But Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind is just such a beautiful, epic film about Nausicaa trying to navigate this post-apocalyptic world with toxic jungles and warring factions, and it's so deep, it hits me so hard, I'm about to cry right now, so I'm gonna stop talking about it. Nausicaa is probably the most underrated 80s movie of all time, in my opinion. I have to mention Koyaanis Katsi. I still think that is one of the most underrated, I don't even know what to call it, experiences in film, in cinema, that you could have. It is incredible and transcendent. Cynthia Lupe asks how I got started with my movie collection and how long it took me to collect all of these movies. It honestly goes back to before I was born. My father was a huge collector of video games and movies before I was born. And then when I was born, I was sort of born into this collection. My father had a lot of connections in the town, and that's in the city that I grew up in. And that sounds a little sketchy, but he knew a lot of people, and he got a lot of great deals with the local mom and pop video stores. They'd order him basically everything that came out, basically everything he wanted to see, he would order on a weekly basis. And so growing up, I was really lucky and grateful that my father was a collector. Yeah, when I moved out, when I was in my mid-20s, I inherited his entire collection, our collection. And that was like 2,500, 3,000 movies, something like that. And so ever since then, over the last 7-8 years, I have gotten that number up to 7,000 to 8,000 films, individual films at this point, which is crazy. And I'm only 32, and I've done this in a really smart way, by the way. Pawn shops, thrift shops, everything, almost everything in my collection was gotten that way. But it really all stems from my father growing up, and I wouldn't have this collection without him. So thanks, Pops. Rest in peace. Jacob Anders Reviews asks what my overall goal with my channel is, if it's something I do just for fun and an outlet, or is it something that I'm hoping to do full-time at some point? Great question. Great question. Like I said earlier in the video, I've been creating my entire life, and I've also, over the last few years, been working to make creating my life, my career, it's what I'm passionate about, it's what I want to do, it's what I feel like I'm here to do. And I'm not really that good at anything else besides entertaining and creating and writing and just being creative. So yeah, I started The Bored Cyborg with a goal in mind. My ultimate goal here is to make movies. I love writing screenplays and scripts, and I love making movies and making skits, and that is my ultimate goal. But really, I want The Bored Cyborg to be the bastion of my creativity. Anything that I come up with, music, my writing, films, shorts, skits, obviously talking about movies, which I love doing. I'd love to do this full time at some point in the future. In the near future would be amazing. I feel like I am having the most fun being creative that I've ever had in my life. And I don't want to stop doing this. And so, yeah, I would love for this to be a full-time gig. But my ultimate goal in this world, in this life, is to make movies, or at least one good one. No, I want to make movies. That's what I want to do, and I want to talk about movies and make videos and make skits. This is what I love doing. It's all I got. And he also asks what I think the thing that sort of propelled my channel or spurred it into motion. A couple things. I do think that posting videos of my collection definitely helped. I mean, I have an extraordinary collection for sure. Not everybody has 7,000 to 8,000 movies in their collection, so that helped bring people into my channel. When I first started my channel, however, I was scripting my videos. And, you know, I didn't really like where that was going, and not many people seemed to enjoy it. I was doing this thing called riff reviews, where I would basically talk about movies in scripted format, add some little jokes here and there, and sort of make it a Mystery Science Theater thing, and with production values and editing and stuff like that. And it's something that I actually want to do moving forward once in a while. But I realized that not many people were really connecting with it. So once I sat in front of the camera and just started going off the top of my dome, that's when people, I think, started connecting with the channel, and I really don't think I'd be where I'm at right now if I didn't start doing that. So those two things, I think, really kicked the channel into motion. Big Al 1982 asks, Stallone or Schwarzenegger? I love both. Both are some of my favorite actors. I'd say top 5, top 10, but Arnie is number 1 or 2. So no question, Arnie over Stallone, but that is not taking anything away from Stallone. I love him to death. I have more of a connection to Arnie growing up with a lot of his movies. I did watch Stallone growing up, but something about Arnie I just really resonated with. So definitely Schwarzenegger. And he also asks what I think is the best piece, the coolest piece that I picked up hunting in the wild. Honestly, it's so hard. Almost everything in my collection came from me hunting in the wild for DVDs and Blu-rays and movies. But what came to mind early in my collecting days, when I started getting really serious in my early to mid-20s, I found The Manitou on DVD, and it was supremely out of print by Anchor Bay, and it was going for like $80 on eBay, and I found that in the wild and at a pawn shop somewhere, and I just lost it, because I had recently fallen in love with that movie, and I still don't have the Blu-ray of that movie, which I really need to upgrade at some point, but the DVD has lost really all of its value, or most of its value, but I have to pick up the Scream Factory Blu-ray before that bad boy goes out of print. The Manitou I've never talked about, but it's one of my favorite horror films of all time. When I found that in the wild, it just blew me away and just gave me some of that dopamine rush of going back and hunting for more movies. Z Alves would like to know about my experience working in a huge bookstore in Raleigh, North Carolina called Ed McKay. I worked there for around 3 years, tried really hard to get the job there because I thought I would fit in really well, and I did, and I loved all the people. I loved everybody I worked with, such creative minds. Everybody was so quirky and witty and eccentric, and I fit right in, and it was a blast, and I discovered tons and tons of movies there. We used to get something like $400 in credit every month, so like $100 in credit on top of our paycheck every week, and that was incredible to me. And we priced things competitively, but I got so much of my collection with that credit, it's not even funny. Honestly, thousands of movies over those 3 years. I was very smart with my credit. I would hold out until something cool came, and everybody knew when a whole bunch of cool stuff came in. It was like, Mike! It's like, coming! No matter what I was doing, I would go over and check to see what was coming in, and we'd call dibs, and it was just so much fun. I loved working there with those guys, but what was terrible about this place was the upper management, the ones pulling the strings. Nobody in-house was shitty, but the upper management sucked. You treated your employees like shit and your customers like shit, and that's why Ed McKay is no longer around in Raleigh, North Carolina. So, good riddance. I know that sounds harsh, but it's true. Mjolnir asks which directors I think have a perfect filmography. Now, I haven't seen all of the films of Sergio Leone's. I haven't seen Colossal of Rhodes and the one that he co-directed before that, but everything after that is like a perfect or near perfect film. You know, Fistful of Dollars for a few dollars more, Good, Bad, and the Ugly, Once Upon a Time in the West, Once Upon a Time in America, Duck You Sucka. Unbelievable filmography. The man only made a handful of films, but goddamn, they're all near perfect to perfect. Tarantino comes to mind, of course. I don't think he's made a bad movie. Jackie Chan's directed movies. I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen like 80 to 85% of them. I think those are all fantastic. Some of the best action movies ever made. And of course, for me, Frank Henenlotter. I know a lot of you may not even know who that is, but Frank Henenlotter inspired my work, influenced me greatly. Exploitation director from New York. He made Basket Case 1, 2, and 3, Brain Damage, Frankenhooker, Bad Biology. Just, I think all of those films are great to perfect, in my opinion. So those are the directors that really come to mind. Oh, and David Cronenberg. Can't forget David Cronenberg. Never seen a bad Cronenberg movie. Also asks how we could get me interested in anime made post-90s, or 2000 on. And to be honest, I've seen Cowboy Bebop. I love Satoshi Kon's work. And I just haven't really dug too deep into anything 2000s and on. Give me some recommendations. I know it's something that I'm going to get to. I'm sort of easing in. I'm just so caught up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and trying to watch everything that I could before I really graduate to more modern anime. I still haven't even seen Neon Genesis Evangelion because I want to watch more of the things that influenced it in terms of mecha anime. So it's not that I'm against it, I just haven't gotten there yet. I'm savoring it, maybe. I'm going to get there one day. And Miyazaki, I adore Miyazaki. I've seen almost every single one of his films save for The Wind Rises. One of my favorite directors of all time. Actually, that's another director, Miyazaki, who has never made a bad movie. So, ever. Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind, Castle in the Sky, Porco Rosso. You could go on and on. Spirited Away. He's one of the greats, and I have seen almost all of his work. Also asks if I think that boutique labels and physical media is going to disappear, and no, I don't think completely. I don't think it will be as ubiquitous as it is now. Obviously, it's dwindling in presence, but I think, just like I think there will always be theaters with that serve alcohol and grindhouse movies, there'll always be a place for that, and retro video game shops. I think physical media shops, there will always be a place for boutique labels and things like that. Even if the niche gets smaller and smaller, there will still be all of us out there at the gates wanting these releases. So, no, I don't think physical media will ever go away completely, at least not in my lifetime, and that's really all I care about, because I'm a selfish bastard. And lastly, Mjolnir asks, which unproduced, unreleased film would I love to see? Immediately, two came to mind. Easy. Gave a couple examples of like Cronenberg's Total Recall, things like that. But for me, Hammer had a bunch of unproduced films. One was Pterodactyls vs. Zeppelins. Yes, there is a poster. It's glorious. I would kill to see that movie. And they were also going to make a Vampirella movie. So those two popped right into my mind. Gotta go with those. Forgive me, Rico Joano, if I mispronounce your name there. He asks if I have any guilty pleasures. And I gotta be honest, I hate that term. I despise that term. If I enjoy a movie, I am never guilty for it, and none of you should ever be. Let's eradicate that saying, guilty pleasures. If you love a movie, own up to it. Say that you love it, even if nobody else likes it. That's what makes you, you. That's what makes me, me. It's a beautiful thing. No guilty pleasures around here, bruh. Never feel guilty for liking a movie. Ever! AJ Styles asks what I think is the most overrated horror film. Well, I've got a list here of a few. Evil Dead remake. That is one that I cannot get down with. I don't understand why people love it so much. I know it's divisive, but I don't get the love for that. It doesn't have anything that makes the original great. It doesn't have Bruce Campbell. Puppet Master. I can't get into the first Puppet Master, and I'm a big Full Moon fan. All the sequels I enjoy, or at least the ones that I've seen, but the first Puppet Master I think is garbage, to be honest, and that lead actor, he's so bad. He's bad in almost everything he's in, but especially bad in Puppet Master. I am not a fan of Puppet Master, I gotta admit. More recently, It Chapter 2. I don't know if people love that movie, but I was so let down by that one after really enjoying the first one. The Halloween remake more recently, I don't get it. I just think it's a mediocre Halloween sequel, just like all the Halloween sequels 5 and on. Also, Eli Roth's work. He's such a pretentious filmmaker, and I don't enjoy really any of his films. I give Hostel a little bit of credit for what it is trying to do, what it did, what kind of ground it broke. Green Inferno, just everything else I've seen from him is pretentious and bad. J.O. Nathan asks if I will ever cut my hair. Not in the foreseeable future. I have no desire to cut it. I'm a long-haired dude. I've accepted that. I love my long hair. As long as I have hair, I think I'm going to be a long-haired guy, to be quite honest with you. And I've had long hair since my late teens. I want to say 18, 17, 18, I started growing it, and I've, trimmed it here and there and whatnot. So, like, going on 15 years. I'm a long-haired dude, man. Michael Schubert had a good question. I've mentioned in previous videos that certain directors have inspired my own work. And I also mentioned earlier in this video that I've been writing screenplays, features, and short films for the last 5-6 years or so. And so that's what I'm referring to. I have a bunch of completed short films that are written and ready to be produced. I've got a few features and a whole bunch of features and shorts that are unfinished that I would love to finish at some point. Unfortunately, there's no way for you guys to really read those yet, but stay tuned because, in the future, I plan to produce these. I plan to make these, to direct these, and to get these out to the public and to you guys, my audience. So these are all part of my bigger picture goal here. So that, I hope, answers your question, Mike. Daniel Solano asks if I think he should buy the DVD version of The Keep or wait for a Blu-ray. I didn't even know The Keep was on DVD. I knew it was floating around out there on like bootlegs and DVD-Rs and things like that with an abysmal sound mix. And if that's what you're referring to, I would say hold out for a Blu-ray, even though Michael Mann says he's not going to do it. That doesn't mean shit to me. In one ear and out the other. I would imagine The Keep is going to get a Blu-ray release at some point. I could see Scream Factory picking something like that up. The DVD, the copy that I've watched, I really like the movie The Keep, but the sound mixing is like abysmal. It's unwatchable at points. The music is too loud. You can't hear what's going on. It's literally peaking in terms of audio mixing. It's really, really bad. So I hope we get a Blu-ray. I'd say hold out for it. Kathy Cook, who I believe is my buddy John Cook, asks if I have seen The Lighthouse yet. And yes, I have. I have seen The Lighthouse. Absolutely loved The Lighthouse. It did make it into my top 10 films and horror films of the 2010s. Man, Robert Pattinson, Willem Dafoe, weird, Lovecraftian, black and white, 4:3 ratio, classic feeling horror film. I absolutely loved it. Mask Media asks if I am working yet, and yes, I am back at work. I've been, as of recording this video, for 3 weeks now. He also asked a really fun question. If I could recast the Expendables with any other actors from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, what would my 9 be? Now, I wrote like 10 or 11. So, Jackie Chan, Michelle Yeoh, Sammo Hung, Scott Adkins, Keanu Reeves, Charlize Theron, Bautista, The Rock, Mark Dacascos, Sonny Chiba, and Tom Cruise. Yes, Tom Cruise as an Expendable. That would be awesome. I can name a whole bunch of other cats I'd love to see in an Expendables or All-Star sort of action movie, but that hopefully answers your question, buddy. Punto Sparazzino asks what my favorite Italian horror film is, The Beyond or Suspiria. On an even keel for me. Beyond or Suspiria, no question. And then they ask what my favorite giallo is, and that would be Suspiria as well, but from what I understand, I guess there's like some sort of a debate as to whether that is giallo or not. I think it is, but if you guys don't count that, then it would be the other Argento films, Tenebrae and Deep Red. I put Deep Red. Deep Red will be my favorite giallo, not counting Suspiria. But if Suspiria counts as a giallo, then Suspiria. Black Cat 2, Hey Heidi, asks if I will ever cut my hair. No. James Borland asks what my top 5 cartoons are. Man, that's a video for another day. I would love to sit down and really figure out what I think my favorite cartoons of all time are. But some that come to mind, I wrote a little list. Ren and Stimpy, number 1. No doubt about it. I could put almost all the 90s Nickelodeon shows on this list. Hey Arnold, Doug, Rugrats. Rugrats is definitely, I think, would be in my top 5. South Park, definitely one of the shows that influenced me greatly. Batman animated series, X-Men for sure, DuckTales. Ugh, I could go on and on. I think that's what, 8? Oh, and anime would be a whole different story. And OVAs, things like that. Bubblegum Crisis is one of my favorite animated shows of all time, but it is an OVA, and I would dare not call it a cartoon. But, yeah, hopefully that answers your question, James. And last and possibly least, Adam Valendra asks, does your telephone happen to have it? And if so, may I borrow 1 or 2 of it potentially? What? He also asks, do you think if I go nowhere, that maybe I have perhaps actually gone somewhere? Well, this isn't a philosophy podcast, but I would say blue? I just want to thank you all so much for watching the channel for the last year and 8-9 months now, which is crazy. I'm going on 2 years. And especially for leaving all these wonderful questions, all these thought-provoking questions. I hope I answered each and every one adequately. I wouldn't be here without my audience, without you guys, my fans, my friends, my supporters. So thank you all so much. I know I've said that a bunch over the last couple weeks, but I can't tell you how much 1,000 subscribers means to me. This is something I've been working hard for the last 2 years and trying to get better as a creator, and it means the world to me. I'm getting choked up. Woo! But for real, thank you all so much. Anyway, guys, I will see you next time. Bored Cyborg, out.